Welcome to the Made for Business podcast, where Catholic moms come to learn how to build a business that is simple, holy, and profitable. I am your host, Sterling Jaquith, and today I am joined by one of my friends, Mrs. Jen Dunlap. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Do you
Thanks
go
so
by
much.
Jen? Do you go by Jen or Jennifer?
Usually Jen. Yeah.
Usually Jen. Okay, awesome. And why don't you just take 2 seconds and tell them what you do for your job right now?
Yeah, I teach nutrition and health classes to moms and kids. I realized that I was talking to moms, but so many said, I wish I had known this when I was a teen. So I started offering teen classes because I already had a lot of experience tutoring and teaching teens since when I was in college. So now I have a website and I do most of my classes on Zoom because that's so convenient for families.
Yeah, I love it. And actually, Jen and I have been working together for a while, and then finally I was looking and realized, oh, my daughter is that age. Like, I didn't think she was a middle schooler. I just thought she was little. And then I looked up the age and I was like, oh my goodness, Rosemary is 11. She's a sixth grader this year. And so I signed her up for one of your health classes, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So today, though, we're going to talk about kind of the messy long road to business, because I think there are a lot of moms who have it on their heart to stay home with their kids. And then they have this moment where they think, okay, but I want to make some more money for my household. And then a lot of times they go out and they work for other people, and they do that for some amount of time. And then God really tugs on their hearts to say, hey, I want you to start your own thing. So let's just start there with your first experience of, wanting to make more money and how you got started.
Yeah, so I started out tutoring for Mother Divine Grace and also doing some private tutoring, which I had done in college, and just kind of segued into my adult life with a family. It was adjustable year to year. So It was a great family job. It was super nice people to work with and really sweet, inspiring families. So it was great for me as a mom, having kids to be encouraged, like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is a good track for my family. Simultaneously, I would just answer all of my friends' health questions. And I'm that lady at the park who, my friend would say, oh, my cramps have just gotten so bad. I'd be like, did you know, what I learned from the books I was always reading for fun.
Yeah.
And so even though I loved teaching and I loved having a reason to read books, and I loved that the pay structure was so simple for Mother Divine Grace, I was still just drawn to nutrition. And I would just be reading this on my own all the time and sharing with my friends. So I had these kind of two things going, where the Mother Divine Grace was reliable and it was kind of packaged all ready to go for me. I had families I was really connected with that I would get year after year. But at the same time, if I'm looking back, I probably would have jumped out of the nest a little bit sooner. And I kind of kept going with Mother Divine Grace because it was so nice and easy. And I didn't try to turn my nutrition stuff into anything that was a business.
Yeah.
It's just a hobby for a long time.
Well, I think that's so common. Hold on, where you love something and you think, because I love it, it's not a business, right? It's like you were doing it for fun. And so it feels weird, I think, sometimes to bridge that I love this and I'm telling my friends to, oh, I guess it could be a business and people could pay me for it. And so I think that's really common, but often I find that God calls us through the hobbies. It's like through the thing that you would do for free for fun.
Yep. And some people would offer to pay. They'd say, no. I have to pay you. You have helped me so much. And realizing that people were voluntarily paying for things kind of started to change my perspective on the value of it. And then when I first offered teen health classes, I said, well, $20 donation for materials, because it was at the local library. And I had offered some classes for moms, and some worked better than others. So I knew I was not shy about getting up in front of an audience, but I also saw for myself that it was sometimes challenging to manage a discussion with a bunch of moms who were 20 years older than me, and I was going to naturally defer. And, it felt a little funny to feel like I had to boss everybody around or kind of manage to control situation in a different way. And as I've gotten older, of course, now I am that older mom. That feels more
Yeah.
natural. But with the teens, I was used to that role of being the teacher. And starting out with live classes allowed me to really see what hit the spot for them and what didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then simultaneously on Mother of Divine Grace, they were doing a lot of classes online. And so I got a sense of how an online class worked and
Yeah.
bonded. And so then even before COVID, I was teaching Zoom classes because I had families around the country, my mom friends my age, who were starting to have middle schoolers and say, hey, could you do an online class?
Yeah.
But it was definitely a lot of trial and error. Every year or every few class sessions, I would kind of raise the price and be like, oh, they'll pay $60 for a
Yeah.
class. Oh, or pay $80. And getting that positive feedback really helped me. But I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't just kind of started.
Yeah.
And the other way that the feedback was really helpful was for the kind of timeline and goal setting. So if it was like, oh, I have this class coming up, I'd like to be able to offer the girls printable chapters, and it's starting in 2 weeks. So I'm just going to kind of hunker down and feed the kids pizza and put a bunch of movies on and just get this done. And
Yeah.
maybe it's the 8 or whatever, but the deadlines at various points have been really helpful for me. Feeling like somebody is counting on me to deliver a thing.
Yeah. I love that you said that because, I think a lot of women are watching us. They're watching us have businesses and they're watching us have a bunch of kids. How many kids do you have? And what are their ages?
I have 5 girls. My oldest is 18. My youngest is 5.
Okay. Awesome. So 18 to 5. And so they're watching you like, how do you do that? How do you school them? How do you manage, your home? And you guys have a lot of animals on kind of a farm-like property. And how do you do it? And I think what they're really saying is, how do I balance everything every day well? And what I want moms to know is that it doesn't look like that. It's that we choose
No,
who gets our attention and it ebbs and flows. And so it's so funny that you as the
right.
nutrition teacher would say, oh yeah, we're going to do pizza and
Yeah.
I'm just going to hunker down and slam this out. But that is the work of it. There are times when I'm really focused on a work thing to get it ready.
Yeah.
And I do love public deadlines because I'm very motivated by public deadlines. But then there are times when the business is kind of, it's never on autopilot, but it's kind of running and I'm delivering a program. And then I'm spending more
Yeah.
time with the kid stuff or house stuff or husband stuff. And so I think it's a misconception that we can have it all the time. It's mostly about, for me, kind of always, what are my top three that I'm focusing on? And usually
Right.
there's a top one that I
Yeah.
am focusing on more than anything. And then two others that are kind of around that I'm thinking about. And life just
Mm-hmm.
ebbs and flows in order to get it done. So I think that's just, I'm glad that you said that because I think it gives them a peek into the reality of what it looks like being a at-home entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day, not all the things will get done, but enough of the things get done enough days. And, there's so many things with house cleaning where you can kind of blitz through and do lunch. It tends to be that maybe a couple of days a week are the heavier house cleaning weeks. We do a lot of easy dinners. And
Yeah.
as a nutrition coach, I know that it doesn't actually matter if your kids have pizza for dinner, if they had a good breakfast and a good lunch, which we tend to have. And again, even nutrition can be on kind of a weekly thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like most things in life work that way, where you can look at the weekly picture or even the monthly picture rather than the daily picture.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Okay, so you're teaching these classes. At what point did you decide to leave Mother Divine Grace and kind of go all in on your business? And was that scary or what were you feeling around that time?
yeah, so they switched to nonprofit, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. And at that point I was pretty part-time
Mhm.
because I had a few other things going on. I still had a young child and we didn't need the money at that point. And so they told us, a bunch of us part-time teachers, okay, we've got to simplify our bookkeeping. And my husband's a business owner, so I totally get that. It's like
Oh,
not, there's kind of the weakest link.
yeah.
And so that was kind of the moment for me to be like, okay, I've got a little time here. I won't have 10 hours of my week committed to Mother Divine Grace. And my friends said, hey, you should become a vendor for the charter schools and offer your classes through the charter schools and look into that paperwork. And also just do general tutoring through the charter schools,
Mm-hmm.
which I've been doing with Divine Grace. So I kind of switched over, did some of the paperwork, and started doing that. And basically matched the income with the one-on-one tutoring that I did. And then started thinking about the website.
Mm-hmm.
My brother designed a website for his company using Wix. And he said, I don't know anything about websites, and I was able to do this. And I looked at his website and it looked way better than I would have expected. So I thought, okay. And there was about probably 20 painful hours on Wix because being in
Yeah.
my late 30s at that point, the technology isn't fun and intuitive. And it just was a kind of a process. And so it was not a fun month, but I got it as far as I could. And it was good enough. It pretty much worked.
Yeah.
And then when I needed a reboot before I went to a homeschool conference about a year later, I reached out to the Wix people and got about $400 worth of spiffing up.
Yeah.
And then also I asked the guy to walk me through how to do some of the things that I wasn't doing well on my own. And he did. And then since then, I've been okay. So again, that was just one more piece of the learning process. Also, writing a book, getting the book layout
Yeah.
is another part of it.
Yeah. I wanna pause on the website piece because I think this is exactly how it plays out, where we love something like nutrition and we're reading the books or we're doing our thing, and then we feel called to business. And it's scary. And then we're like, okay, I'm going to jump. And then the first thing usually that you have to do is go through technology purgatory, right? Which is
Yeah.
just, and
Yeah.
I don't know that the age matters. I mean, unless they happen to know how to build websites, I don't know anyone who was like, oh, that was no big deal. I just threw my website together. Like, it's just a slog. And I think it's really one of the first hurdles where you have to just decide, am I doing this? Am I a business owner?
Right.
Am I going to offer this? And that's kind of the first test that everyone gets to take, which is how do you then create an online presence? And
Mm-hmm.
it's so unromantic. It's like the least exciting
Yeah.
part of doing business, and it's just really front loaded because you have to do so much of that until you literally can open your doors and collect the first dollars. And so if
Yeah.
you're experiencing this or thinking about starting a business and this is about to come for you, I just want you to know that nothing has gone wrong. It doesn't mean that you didn't hear your calling. It doesn't mean that this isn't the work for you. It doesn't mean that you're dumb. It doesn't mean that, I mean, I have a lot of moms who didn't go to college, and I see that they hold that against themselves. They think like, oh, I didn't go to college, so
Yeah.
like I'm not good at business. And that's just not true at all. And struggling to put a website together is just an everyone experience. Everyone is going to have that experience, and it doesn't mean anything about you or your capacity for business or that God is calling you to do this. And so you made it. You made it through technology purgatory to get the website up. And then people started taking your classes. And then it was kind of testing. It sounds like you were testing a lot. And then when did you decide to add the Moms Club and the Teen Club? And tell us what that is.
Yeah. So the moms that were, my friends from before that were signing their daughters up, they would often text me with questions. And at a certain point, I said, I'm answering a lot of the same questions because,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting to these perimenopause hurdles or thyroid questions. And I thought this would be more efficient and more fun to do as a group. And so I already had the Zoom room, and I just emailed some ladies and said, hey, what's a good time for several of you who regularly ask me questions, and I'm happy to answer them, but what's a good time to get together? And I also knew that some of these moms were kind of geographically isolated or just isolated by the number of kids they had and trying
Yeah.
to be diligent on homeschooling and the topography of their area and a variety of factors. So for some of these moms, it was really special to get on Zoom. They weren't
Yeah.
bumping into a bunch of other moms regularly with just the way their schedules were. And so the way we structure it is we kind of do different things each week. This week we were just chatting about meal planning and scheduling and kind of looking towards the fall and holidays and how to streamline that. At least once a month, we do an in-depth nutrition health discussion. And I do a PowerPoint and kind of try to gather a ton of information and save them time.
Yeah.
Because you can go down the internet rabbit holes, but not most people don't enjoy it as much as I do. And and I love gathering information. Maybe it's just how I was educated. I got a liberal education. I read a ton. And so synthesizing and putting it together is actually super fun for me.
Yeah. Probably
And then,
personality type too.
yeah. Yeah. And then we kind of just go through the slides and talk about it, and everybody comments. And then the moms kind of share their experiences. So maybe if we're talking about thyroid, a bunch of them have already been kind of tackling this. Yeah. It's a really common issue when you've had a bunch of kids. And so they'll say, oh, this worked for me and this worked and this didn't help. And then I tried this and my blood work did, so it's a really concentrated, focused discussion. You could hear about this from a couple of your local friends. If you were bumping into enough moms, you would probably come up. But this is a place where we're gathered with that intention to share really productively and make sure we're kind of all on the same page in terms of the background knowledge on that topic. And then also share what we've tried for, many of us have tried different things for different situations. So we've done healthy pregnancy as an older mom, histamine, autoimmune conditions. I don't know, so many fun topics.
I think that's great. And I think it's just always evolving. Like I'm never done thinking about food and, vitamins and, is it paleo? Is it AIP? Like what's causing inflammation? Like we're all just going to have to be responsible for our own health from now on. Like that's never just going to be done. So I love the idea of a place where you can gather with like-minded women who are talking about that. And so, okay, so that's the Moms Club. What do you do with the girls, the teenage girls?
Yeah, so after the younger girls' health classes or the high school girls' health classes, a number of moms said, oh, my daughter's so sad the class is ending. She wishes she could keep seeing these same girls. They've been so nice. They've had great discussions. And so I said, well, let's just try this. Let's have a twice a week or twice a month thing where we just keep talking about those goals. So I'll open with a little tidbit, like a little health tidbit that I learned or thought would be fun to highlight this time of year. If it's summer, like let's talk about hydration. Let's talk about fatigue from swimming. Or if it's winter, let's talk about how do you get exercise in the winter. We talk about that for a few minutes, but then I also have a running list of the girls' goals. And so we check in, and usually they have several goals they're working on. So I'm like, oh, how's your Bible reading going, Lucy? And she kind of tells me what book she's on. Or, oh, you said you wanted to keep your room tidier and declutter. Do you want to give us the tour? How's it going? Or you said you were going to learn 3 new songs for Christmas caroling, and then they'll play them for us. So it's very interactive. The girls love it.
Amazing.
Yeah. They're actually recently a couple of girls in the health club were able to meet each other in person, kind of accidentally. And they were like, it was like they were celebrities for each other because they'd only ever seen each other on Zoom, and they got to meet in life, and they were so stoked.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And one of the things we kind of breezed by this is that you're Catholic, but your classes on the website don't say Catholic on them because you are available as a vendor for charter schools. And I just thought that was such a clever business move on your part that people can use charter school money because it's not a religious program. But I love that you offer health classes and that you just take it all the way on food, nutrition, sleep, goals, bodies, periods, hormones, changes, all the way up to the sex piece, and that you're not really addressing that. And so it's a really safe place, particularly, I think, for those of you that are Catholic homeschoolers and want your kid to have a health class because they're not going somewhere, that you can really trust that this class is going to cover the things you want them to know without wondering if any of the weird stuff that's happening in the world right now is going to make it there. And yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I think that's great. What feedback do you hear from the moms about that?
Yeah, probably 90 to 95% of the girls are Catholic. I mean, most of the time, the whole section is Catholic girls. Sometimes we've had secular or Christian homeschoolers sign up and they also want a class that doesn't have TMI because,
Yeah.
plenty of secular people homeschool their kids to preserve their innocence
Yeah.
also. And the feedback I get from the moms is that the girls learn things in health class that they were not hearing, even though the moms were telling them. And
Yeah.
I know one of my best friends, she tells her girls when they have a health question, she says, well, what did Mrs. Dunlap say in your health class? Because she knows all the same stuff.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
knows all the same stuff, but she knows it sounds really different when she's like, well, what does it say in your health book?
Yeah.
It seems more legit, official. And I hear that all the time, that the moms say, she's eating way more vegetables. She's prepping lunch for her siblings and she's making a whole plate of fruit and vegetables for them.
Yeah.
Or she's going to bed, or she's exercising more the week before her period. She's cut down on the dairy. The girls will just share different things that work. So it's not my ideas. I'm often just guiding the discussion.
Yeah.
I kind of know where it can go. And then I try to scribe, be like, how do you manage your mood? Or what do you do when you're having a bad day and you can't focus? And then we write down everybody's ideas.
Yeah. I love
So
it.
get a
And
lot of feedback from.
you also record the classes so the moms could watch it if they want. I'll admit I have put them in a folder and I have not watched them, but I do check in with Rosemary afterwards and she really enjoys it. And I love that I can lean on that. It's exactly that. It's that I'll say, oh, what did you learn? And I'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, and it's just so wonderful that it's not me,
Yeah.
saying it. And that's so meaningful to her. And she really enjoys the other girls too. We signed her up for a biology class, and it was just a regular online biology class, and she does not like the kids. She said they're not very nice. She doesn't like it. And we don't know that we're going to do that again, but it's just interesting that we've done these two things for the first time, and she always speaks so positively about the girls in the health class and does not really like the conversations that are happening in the science class. She'll say, and it's not egregious. It's not enough that I would be like, oh no, and I'm pulling her out, but it's just
Right.
kind of worldly things that we don't talk about and that she also
Yeah.
doesn't find very interesting. So we didn't talk about the book that they get. So you do give them this book. They get this awesome handbook that you put together that they can go through and have. And
Yeah, there's I just wrote it so they could have a kind of a starting point to be prepared to think about these things and discuss them. And each chapter is pretty short, and then it has some little discussion questions. Sometimes the kids write in them, and sometimes they don't write in the books. But I just needed a physical thing to kind of give to them. So after the first few years of giving the classes and writing all these kind of sample chapters, I eventually got it actually printed with a local printer. Again, I just self-published it.
Yeah.
Just kind of invested in that. And it's been really fun to be able to give the girls a nice printed book. And I also did it with a local publisher so I could actually see the paper and just have that back and forth with them. I didn't do that kind of Amazon, like I have no idea what it'll look like when it's printed thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. It's very colorful. And people can buy that on your website. So even if you don't sign up for one of the classes, you can go to Jen's website and just print off that book, and you could sit with your daughter and go through it. And it's just colorful and great, and I really like it. And I think it is good for the girls to have like a physical thing that they could reference. All right, they can kind of flip through and be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's what we talked about. So in addition to, so you do a middle school girls class and then a high school girls class. What is the difference kind of between those?
Well, I started out teaching middle schoolers, and then a lot of moms approached me a couple of years later and said, I think she could really use a refresher now that she's actually had her period for a couple.
That's cool.
For things. And then I had older parents coming in, or parents of older girls saying, she's 16. I really want her to know some things before she goes to college. So obviously it's really different content with a 16-year-old versus a 10 or 11-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
I had originally written one book or, a series of chapters. And so what I ended up doing was trimming it down for the middle schoolers. And then I had a list that I developed of a bunch of things I wanted to add for the high schoolers. So fortunately, I was able to take one thing and turn it into two things. So for the high schoolers, for example, when we talk about periods, we also talk about things like polycystic ovary syndrome,
Mm,
hypothyroid symptoms, endometriosis, because I tell the girls, even if you don't have these things, you can be a blessing to your friends if
yeah.
they're saying, looking through, 8 pads in a day, and you can say, you should really get that checked out. A lot of times people don't know how to guide their friends, and I want the girls to have that information both for themselves and to just be able to be there for their peers.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of particular things I wanted to address before they get to college about your immune system, how to maintain a strong immune system when you're in college, or choices about sleep and exercise, and more detailed information about muscle growth, and even things like ADHD and addiction and that kind of impulsivity and how
Yeah.
to manage that if you have that tendency. We don't go into it with those terms or any of those details with the younger girls, but with the older girls,
Right.
if they're heading off to college or moving
Yeah.
out, they're going to be making decisions about where to put their time and energy. And if they know that they have trouble focusing, if they know that they're kind of impulsive, it's better to kind of acknowledge that and work with it and say, yeah, it's going to be a thing. And you're totally going to be able to figure it out. And I'm pretty disorganized in a lot of ways, and I still have a good life. And I've
Yeah.
slowly built systems, and so can you, right?
Yeah, I love that.
So,
I love that. And I love when other adults are really just like honest with teenagers about just kind of the messiness of life and how we figure things out slowly over time. And it's great. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. I think that teenagers just
yeah,
receive so many negative messages about teenagers, like that they're horrible and it's such a hard time anyway. And so
right.
I love that there can be this kind of positive place where you treat them like mature people. We're like, yeah, you can understand this and you
Yeah,
can figure this out. And you also can then be a beacon of information or light or hope to other people around you. I think that's so fantastic. Okay,
yeah.
so
And I really want to emphasize the positive in their families when they're
yeah,
talking about their family. It's like, they might have a negative view about some things, but there is positive aspects, and then they're going to be able to make different choices when they have their own families. But they do need to acknowledge the good that their parents are trying to do.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that that's really helpful too. Um, yeah, I can tell that my oldest daughter just thinks that some of the things we do are just absolutely crazy. But I was trying to tell her the other day, I was like, do you understand that for a lot of families, the mom and the dad leaves the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and they don't come back to the house until 5:30 or 6. They're just gone and the kids don't see them. And she just doesn't understand this like radically different life that we lead, and that it's just not very
Yeah,
common to have both of your parents home most of the time and kind of no rigorous schedule. Like we just get to play so much. Because she just has no reference point for that. She doesn't know. So I think it's great to be in this class and just to hear the different styles. Not that it's better or worse, but just to hear that there are different ways that people live and eat and handle having, kids at home.
yeah, yeah. In a class of 8 or 10 girls, almost no matter what someone complains about, someone can empathize.
Yeah.
That's the way it works out. A lot of people say, oh, sibling relationships are challenging. And we talk about,
Yeah.
what can you do? What can you talk to your parents about? Or what do you just have to put up with
Yeah.
until you get older? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Okay. So you've got the health classes, you've got the girls club and the moms club, which I think is so awesome that they can continue that work and really spend time with you and with each other. And then you also offer a safety class, which I just signed Rosemary up for in January. So I'm super. Tell me about the safety class. It looks awesome.
So again, my friends were like, are there any other classes you could offer? Because we're totally happy to have the kids take classes. They're really fun. They're game for whatever. And I realized that for my own kids, since I've had to take first aid and CPR like every other year since I was 16, one thing or another, I'd taken this so many times. And I told my own kids so many safety tips. And then
Yeah.
my friend has a tradition that they start out every homeschooling year with a week of safety,
Mm-hmm.
because it's super engaging for kids. They love talking about disaster scenarios and blood and wounds and what if, right?
Yeah.
It's like this adrenaline rush. And so I thought, oh, this will be super fun.
Yeah.
So I just thought through it for a little bit and kind of picked 8 weeks of different themes. So it's
Yeah.
like outdoor safety, water safety, because there's so much to talk about there.
Yeah.
Um, common heart attack, stroke, like what are the signs of those sorts of things, just so they can get a little bit of a sense of how to recognize certain things. And they're really fun because, of course, the kids love sharing whatever disaster stories they have from their families. And then my brother broke his arm and he fell off the swing set. So it's a very fun interactive class. I pull up slides
Yeah.
and talk to the kids about wound care and, why you need to press on the bleeding for 20 minutes so it can actually form a clot.
Yeah. So great.
Yeah, they
Love it.
love it. My kids
Okay.
loved it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love your business and I'm kind of on a mission to tell everyone about it because I think that you're kind of like a sleeper agent, right? Like people don't if you're Googling Catholic health class, you're not going to show up.
Right.
And I love that. It's so strategic. And so, I just want all of you listening to think about, who are the families that with teen or preteen girls that need some health information because it is often not the girls just don't necessarily want to hear it from their mom, right? And you're totally right. Like
Yeah.
we know the things that we want to tell them,
Yeah.
and we might even have told them, but they just like it's in one ear and out the other. And so I love that this is something that people can go through. So
Yeah.
you are in the Made for Business Society. How has that changed your experience of doing business? Like entrepreneurship is so lonely and we're doing it in our office and trying to make all our own decisions. And so what
Yeah.
has your experience of that program been like?
It's it's great. I mean, one of the things I realized for myself was that part of why my progress along this path was kind of slow was that even though I had a bunch of mom friends who were super encouraging and supportive and would sign their kids up for classes, I didn't have business ladies, especially Catholic business ladies, walking this path with me. So
Mhm.
none of my local friends run their own businesses, even though they're super supportive of mine. So in my research, I would follow a bunch of people who had good business advice and look at different things and listen to business podcasts, but there was no community that I was part of. And so I started getting your emails, I don't know, maybe it was a year ago or more. And I thought, oh, okay, these are people who will get me. And I watched one of your seminars that you gave on managing kids and your business. And
Mhm.
a lot of what you said I was already doing, but I realized I'm not the only person
Yeah.
doing these things.
Yeah.
And so that community was really what I was going for. A bunch of other people who are kind of at that stage where they're jumping into the next level. And I thought this will be super fun to be with a bunch of other people who are right on the cusp.
Yeah.
And we're kind of supporting each other and celebrating getting through tech purgatory or
Yeah.
trying the next thing. Like for me, it was Instagram Reels just the last week, and just that accountability.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to tell myself, as a disorganized obliger, like I'm going to do these things. And it's
Yeah.
another thing to tell 20 people on Slack, I'm going to do these things and then be like, oh, I
Mhm.
didn't quite.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. And it's a super fun group. And so what would you say to a mom who is maybe in your position? Maybe she's making money for someone else or kind of has a side thing, but she's got this love in her heart and she's nervous about jumping. Like, what advice would you give her?
I'd say just start. Just start with something. Offer a little something to your community, take some donations, and then you'll see what parts you like, what parts you're already good at, where you need to tune it up. And they will give you feedback too
Yeah.
about what was for them. And maybe check in with them a few months later and say, hey, what's been actually helpful from what I offered, or what did you feel was the thing I was offering? And your friends can tell you, the people in your community can give you some of that feedback and let
Yeah.
you know what is it that you're offering. And I realized for myself, the thing I was offering was that pulling it together into something convenient for people, because if you don't love nutrition or whatever topic, it's not convenient to learn about it. That's why my friends would call me, because it saved them
Yeah.
so much time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I didn't know until I started that was
Mhm.
what I was offering.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think a lot of people want to be in the planning stages for so long, But really, you just have to go to the marketplace and offer something, and then the marketplace will tell you what works and what doesn't work. And then you'll know too, like, oh, do I like it in person? Do I like 8 weeks? Do I like 12 weeks? Like, you're going to figure that out too. And there's no way to know that ahead of time. You just kind of have to get in there
No,
and roll up your sleeves and do it. But then you learn, and then that's also how your confidence is so high, because you're like, yep,
totally.
this is what they want, and this is how I like to do it.
Yeah. And that concept of the no-brainer price of like there's no reason to say no at at different price points, and just kind
Yeah.
of working my way up as I was offering a more and more fine-tuned version of the
Mhm.
health class.
Yeah.
And I was more confident that that was the value I was delivering. But it
Yeah.
was just a process, kind of keeping going on it.
Yeah. I love that.
And yeah,
Yeah. I think I
yeah,
have an episode about that, which is I say, offer it as low as you can without feeling bitter. And
yep,
just to get that feedback and to get those testimonials, and then ratchet it up. I do think that that's the fastest way to grow the business. And now after talking with you, I see that it's also kind of the fastest way to grow your confidence too. And
yes,
because
yes.
you get that feedback, and then and then you're also kind of raising your confidence. All right, so tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, my website is brightfamilies.com. I've also got Instagram, Bright Families, and I have a podcast also called Bright Families. I'm probably not the only podcast called that because there's so many,
Yeah.
but it's got a, pink background logo with a yellow circle and some letters.
Yeah.
And I've had podcasts of all different lengths. More recently, I've been doing shorter ones so moms
Yeah.
can just get some quick tips and also get a sense of my style.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so if you want to hear kind of what she sounds like, you can go check that out. I'll link all of them up in the show notes so you guys can see it. But certainly brightfamilies.com will get you everywhere that you need to go. And I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. We live in such a weird, twisted, toxic world right now. And so I think most of us are just so scared about what to do with our kids. And I'm just so grateful that I feel like you've created this really lovely, safe, and really science-based health class, which is really what I wanted. I wanted her to learn the truth, but just without all of that side of weird stuff that's out there. So I really appreciate that you said yes to this, even though business is hard and websites are hard. That you were brave enough to do that, because what you do is such a gift to all of the families who get to send their kids to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super fun. They're super sweet girls. These are good families. I know all these families are trying super hard and it doesn't always feel like they're succeeding. But when I see the girls in class, I see how you're succeeding
Yeah.
because they're sweet with each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. That must be a cool thing to see. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jen, and sharing your story. I think it's just great for other people to see all the many different ways that we come to business, and the many different kinds of businesses that you have. And I love this model of, putting together a book and teaching classes, especially being able to receive charter funds. I think that's great. And then adding a membership where they can continue that work with you and continue that work with each other. I think that is so clever. So, all right, you guys, pray and listen to what God is putting on your heart. If He's asking you to jump and to do something that sounds scary, because we'll stand here and say it's not always perfect or easy, but man, it really is worth it to do what God has designed you to do. Thank you so much for listening, you guys, and have a blessed day.